here we go with our next War of Rights weekly podcast. It should be interesting. We're going to be talking about metas in War of Rights. Obviously, there's the European NA meta. There's no Europeans here except for Killer, and Killer will
Wow.
do his best. But this will be an interesting conversation. Europeans that aren't here, feel free to say stuff in the chat if you disagree, which you probably will. Same with North
I'm here to
Americans.
defend you. I'm here to defend you.
Killer will try. But
No, what?
I'm sorry. I'm this is the backlash from this might be as bad as the tier list, at least from
No, no, it won't.
all right. But cool. So before we get started into this, let's go through and introduce everyone. Gustav was supposed to be here, but power went out, so he might join midway through. But other than that, first we have Grant.
I'm the first sergeant of the 30th Ohio Corn Brigade. We also got D tier in the list, also known for Dorn. We take great pride in that. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Next we got Womp Womp.
Hi, I'm a Corn Brigade, 8th Ohio, Captain Womp, E tier.
McPhail.
5th NC, Sussex Brigade, A tier, and A tier.
Killer.
Killer. European representative to the Battle Line Network. European God, European King. God save Europe.
And we got Corded.
I'm Corden, captain of the Chosen Men of Delta Company in 6 Louisiana, baby.
I will forever say that the Shenandoah Valley Regulars are the chosen men. But
Yeah.
You can try.
no, they're that. Tall Gray is that guy. But cool.
S tier.
He was S tier.
Actually, I figured out a strategy.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody's shitting on European metas, I'm just gonna slurp my tea.
That's a fair strategy. So
Yeah.
I guess that's the big topic is European versus NA meta. The European tries to get a more, if I describe this correctly, a more Napoleonic type fighting, double ranks.
Right.
Try to be what they call historical with these numbers. And the NA plays more of a, how would you describe it? More towards the meta of War of Rights, a much more fast-paced type of play than Europeans. So what are your guys' thoughts on him? What one's better? What one's worse? What do you like? Anyone want to go?
Okay, well, as a person who does 3 EU, 3 NA events a week, okay, I'm pretty
What events do you do?
well, we do Friday EU community event, Friday NA community event, then we do Grand Campaign and Maryland Campaign, and then we do Sunday HRE, and then Sunday NA community event.
Alright.
It's very big.
It is. No.
And we don't necessarily do any, well, apart from Sunday EU, but like we don't do like Friday or Saturday UEC events, which is when like the very, very big, like, this is the thing that people think when they think of European metas, though, is like they think of the UEC, which is like a line battle event. It's not like that's the whole basis of that event. Like that's the rules of that event, so that's how they play in that event. Whereas like a normal community event, there's no rules, so that people play however the hell they want to play. But one thing that I think people forget, though, go on, do you want to say something, Eagle?
No, you finish your point.
One thing that people forget is like when it comes to European and this type of like time period, quote unquote, like for the Americans, like there's no other like history wise, the Civil War and like the Revolutionary War, whatever you want to, all of those things were like very late in that sort of Napoleonic style fighting period, if that makes any sense. Whereas for Europeans, like the history, like we've had like hundreds more years of doing sort of that kind of fighting type of thing. Does that make sense? So that's just something that like appeals to us more, like when you like historical type games. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone.
I have a question for you, Killer. I'm wondering. So in the events that aren't UEC, so not like a line battle oriented. Would you say that those events are more similar to NA type events and the way that NA meta typically goes, or are they kind of their own unique kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Just like, of course, there's differences because compared to EU and NA, there is a lot less EU regiments, and some regiments are a lot bigger. Whereas in NA, you can sometimes have like 6, 7 different regiments per side. Whereas in EU events, sometimes there's not as many, kind of thing. So we do have bigger lines sometimes and all that malarkey. So we do like to get the odd, line up volley kind of thing. But they are still as fast paced as NA events are, yeah. Which
I
I would
wouldn't.
encourage. Oh, go on, sir.
So, are you talking like fast paced for like UEC line battles or the other EU events that you're talking about?
Like normal community, no rules
Okay.
EU events, like Grand Campaign, for instance.
Yeah, no, I would consider Grand Campaign more like an NA event,
Yeah,
at
it's
least
just
from the
playing the
times I've done
game.
it.
Yeah, it's just playing the game the way that like the game kind of has to be played because of timer, tickets, and point kind of thing. Whereas in the UEC, they don't really care about tickets or time. They just fight it out like just raw in lines shooting until they're dead and they fall back. Which
So,
go on, sir.
Which one do you think leads to more charges?
NA.
Yeah, I mean EU, they just
Mm.
from the times I've spectated, um, the one time I remember spectating UEC and HRE occasionally, it's more of just bigger line battles following at each other for 45 minutes.
with that being said, with the UEC, I'm not sure how long UEC has been going on for. I know it's been going on for a while, but has been relatively the same for most of its existence. Has it kind of settled into its nature, or is it still like evolving? Is there like an old versus new meta for UEC?
No, like, there's not really that like obviously probably before I can't remember if it was pre-artillery when it was started, but obviously that would have changed it a bit or at least somewhat. But you can't really in terms of the base game, you can't really change a meta considering like maybe some rules have changed to help make it somewhat easier or harder for the defenders or attackers after they've tried it and stuff. Like you could see in campaign events all the time, like things do change because of like say conquest or contention, all that stuff. But in terms of base game, then no, it's kind of just the same stuff, same rules. And it still gets a large player base because that's just how like a lot of Europeans like to play. Like UEC still fills a full server on a Friday, and I'm pretty sure it gets close to it on a Saturday too. Because a lot of people just like that kind of like I do enjoy it. Like my guys enjoy it too, but we just prefer like because we do EU and NA, we have a pretty big NA side. We have we have a bigger but a pretty big EU side too. So we just like the middle ground pretty much, which is just the European community events. Because we have some regiments which are slower paced, and then we have some regiments which are constantly running around like preacher like, just constantly getting in people's faces.
Huh. I I find that kind of interesting because at least from my point of view, standing in a line for 45-ish minutes, maybe doing one or two charge over the course of the whole match and just shooting is pretty boring. At least from my view.
That's where I
Um,
was getting at with the charging. Is charge. A lot of guys that in my regiment will say that they like to charge.
but
Well, yeah, but it's not like you would think that they were just like standing 500 yards away, volleying across a map, but they do. Like the one time we did it, like about a month or two ago, like around the start of the year, actually, so it would have been a couple months ago, because we haven't done UEC for like I would say like a year, and then we did it at the start of the year, um, and it wasn't very great maps. It was like Auto Shark Farm and Roulette Lane, so it wasn't necessarily like big, like, like volley, big open field maps, but they still do like advance up and stuff. And if you're the attacker, you still have to attack because the point is still enabled and stuff. And
but
like
at least the few times I've played in them, it's just like you sit back and shoot for a while and then maybe charge late game. more focuses towards the volleying. I guess I mean if people enjoy standing and shooting and volleying for 45 minutes, so be it.
It's very
But
nostalgic. It's very nostalgic. Like
It's also, it's
I
probably pretty cinematic too.
yeah,
that
like
is true.
I could say, right, probably very confidently that if there was a game like Spit and Double of War of Rights, like graphics wise, like that type of FPS, not like Hold Fast or Beak Off, like exactly the same as War of Rights, but the uniforms were Napoleonic and the regiments were Napoleonic. The EU community in this game would probably shatter, and there will be barely anything left. Because I know for a fact that I'd go straight over to that game, and I'd just do any events for War of Rights. But I think even when it comes to Americans, I would still think Americans somewhat would be more interested in Napoleonic Wars over something like this. Because like you get some people which are very state proud. You know, my granddad fought in this regiment, so I feel proud fighting for this regiment. Kind of BS, you know, but that's respectable somewhat. But for the European community, like we just like that style of gameplay. I don't like doing it personally all the time. Like for us, it's a nice every 6 months to a year kind of fighting. But we like doing it, you know, every now and again. But we prefer to just do the fast play, fast pace, moving around, charging, all that malarkey kind of shooting, kind of fighting. Bit like NA, pretty much.
What it sounds like is that it's pretty established or non-controversial to say that NA tactic, NA meta, would definitely beat UEC tactics and meta, but that it's not really a comparison of the two, just because they're too different from each
It's
other.
like by design, basically.
Yeah,
I would say if NA regiments tried to do a UEC and play the way UEC play, it would get stomped 9 out of 10 times.
that's a fair
And
Oh, yeah.
European regiments that do UEC trying to play in the North American style fast play. Obviously, some of the UEC regiments aren't, as you know, but obviously the bigger lines like the German corps and stuff, and the French ones, they're very stuck in their kind of ways. But there are some that can play different styles, like. But I'd say Europeans trying to play the way that Americans play, especially on certain maps, they would probably get stomped as well.
If you
that's
put
a good point.
if you put though, like for example, a UEC versus a NA event, 150 on each side, and they do their according meta, who would win? Right?
I think it would be pretty close in my opinion.
You think
I
it'd
don't
be
think
close?
I don't think it would be as like one-sided as one might think.
I would
I think it
disagree.
depends on the map.
I would
Yeah,
disagree as well.
I think that's true with what McPhail
Pick
said. But
pick a map. Pick a map on like Antietam.
Yeah, but I'd like Dunker's Church, for instance. I think it would be more NA sided purely for the fact that NA strat and meta seems to be more default in the sense, whereas UEC is very like premeditated, organized kind of movement, whereas
Yes.
NA seems to be more like playing it on the fly by ear, moving quick. And so I think if you were to put the two against each other, I think that the match would default to NA tactics, just for the sake that if NA decides to use NA tactics, then it's rather UEC has to try to use those tactics as well, or else
Somewhat, yeah.
they're not going to be able to keep up speed of game wise.
I don't think they would do as well. I think they definitely would struggle to try and keep up with your guys' like pace. But I think they would still shock you a bit because like it can we did it like the first time we did a UEC event was like 2 years ago, and we got absolutely stomped trying to do because they can form lines fairly quickly, like double lines, all that stuff.
That's a really
And
good point. Probably
they
really
can
organized.
yeah, they can do because that's what they drill on and stuff, and they can do that fairly quickly. And it's like it shocked us a bit when we're standing there like taking like 20-30 seconds to get a nice perfect double line, and they're already
Mhm.
formed up and they're just about to destroy you. It did put a shock on our faces.
Do you think you would have performed better if you weren't? I don't know if you were you forced to form double ranks and all that, or did you just want to do that for the event?
So in UEC, pretty much it's like you don't have to form double lines, but you are if you have like because when we did it at the start of the year, we had like a 45-man line from A and V, I think, something like that. Um, so in the pretty much in the rules, if I remember correctly, it was like you are I can't think of the word, advised, or they would like ideal. It's kind of ideal to form a double ranked line if you have a big like 20+ man line kind of thing. Like it's not forced, but they think you should probably do it for the for reasons kind of thing. But I
Well,
don't think you're forced to form double lines. No,
do you think you would have performed better if you did not have to form double ranks and
we would be
such?
slightly we would be slightly faster, but not really because being in a single column or a single line and a double line doesn't necessarily change too much, especially when you're volleying and stuff, because you can pretty much just see over the guy's shoulder anyway.
Here's a question. So the EU volleys, do they drill on like if you're on the left side of the line, shoot the left side of the line, or do they all just
Probably.
aim for the middle?
I wouldn't know what they drill on, but yeah, I'd probably say they do something along the lines of that. Yeah.
Because that's something that's always irked me when I've seen volleys in this game, that everyone aims for the middle of the line, and so you get a volley of 20 people and like 5 guys at the middle of their line go down, and that's it.
When I've been watching these reenactment events, I will see a lot of guys die in the middle of a line, but not on the outsides. So
That's just kind of like a thing though, because like even I sometimes forget to do that when if I'm on the side of a line, because I just try and shoot for like I look at the first guy I see, or I look at the like the group of guys that are normally like pretty close together, which is the guys in the middle.
would all right. So
Right? No, sorry, go on.
so kind of back to the map thing, right? Is there a map like Womp Womp you would say that is advantageous to EU line battle UEC type gameplay?
I would say definitely like UEC would benefit obviously from big open fields where they can form up, and easily shoot at the enemies. I think Killer will agree with me on this.
Oh,
But I think the NA kind of hit and run speed tactics would work better on maps where it's harder to do so, like Harper's Ferry maps, for instance, like Washington Street and maps like that.
Wooded maps and maps with cornfields, I think, and it would
yeah, wooded
probably
maps,
better.
cornfields, city maps, and pretty much any map that kind of has like obstructions in a way, like that stops like people from being able to see a wide like when we did our Not Sherrick, obviously you got those buildings which can be really annoying because if they just didn't have those buildings, then you could pretty much see from the left side of the map to the right side of the map and volley from anywhere, so you don't have to move around as much. Like, but moving around in the UEC rules can sometimes take some time, but generally on maps where it's bigger, wider, open spaces, it's probably way easier.
Do you
In my
think like
opinion.
in the Steam chat for EUC, is it
They don't
they,
use Steam
They
Chat.
don't use
They use
it.
Messenger.
okay, for like a EU event when they have Steam chat, do they react as fast as NA people react? Like if you call for help, are they there as quick as an NA?
Yeah, I'd say so. Because, like, I do EU and NA events. Like I say, they're pretty much the same amount, apart from, like, Wednesday Picket Patrol, which you can't really use any sort of tactics in that because you just have to war around and kill things. I don't differ my tactics depending on what kind of event we're doing. Obviously, if it's a ruled event, then yeah. But if it's not, like, if it's a community EU event or community NA event, I don't really change. And depending on how big my line is, really, which at EU events I have a bigger line, so I'm sometimes not as aggressive, or I don't do it like the skirmishy type stuff that I might do if I have like a 15-man line at NA or some malarkey, you know.
In maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but in the regular EU events, the non UEC event, are they using the newer kind of strat of hiding out of bounds as the defender to force an attacker cap early?
Turtling.
Yeah, we won't beat around the bush.
It is. It never really is. We did it like I think like Grand Campaign on a Saturday, but that's like a campaign event, so that's just like a save tickets, don't kill your token kind of event. But on a Friday and Sunday, it's not really like go hideout or we don't really do like a hideout or bounce kind of thing. It's not really. It is used in NA events. It is used pretty much every single week, at least once on a Friday or a Sunday. Like that's just a fact. It
And
is. It is used way more in NA than it is in the EU.
I've been seeing that over the past couple months. It's been popping up for the past 6 months or so, I'd say, especially. But over the past couple months, it's become a lot more prevalent. Where NA, and I've been seeing this in HDC, the main event that we participate in. HDC, you have the defending unit will hide out in some place that's rather difficult or nearly impossible for the attackers to shoot you. So you're at this point, the defender's basically going engaged, even rare for taking losses, and the attackers are forced to cap the point before they go to breaking. And then the defenders will come out and assault them until they get to the morale state lower, or taking losses. Let the point come back, and then they rinse and repeat that strat until they're able to get the attackers to last stand on the counterattack.
Pretty much like last week in the podcast, Sevi's response to the turtling was, well, if every unit starts doing it, then nobody will do it. Like if the defenders go turtle, the attackers cap point, and then since the attackers become the defenders, they go and turtle, then the defenders who are now the attackers come out and cap point, and it's so just keeps going back and forth. That's not going to be fun for anybody.
Yeah.
To do any. So it's like, I get his point where like if everybody starts using it, nobody will use it. But do we have to go through like months of boring events just for people to stop turtling?
That's the debate that's going on in HDC right now as well. Is that because eventually it's just going to be a back and forth of just capping and then running away, capping and running away until eventually the attackers are forced to make a stand at point, or else they run out of time and they lose the round. And that's boring. That's boring.
It is boring. I agree.
So but we think that there's been a strategy found just in the past few weeks that would, in theory, counteract it.
It's like the anti-turtle.
Yeah, like an anti-turtle kind of thing. And it involves just basically wait. So it's boring in the sense that you have to wait it out, but they turtle, you wait it out, but then within the last 5 minutes, you cap the point, and the cap timer obviously has decreased because it's proportional to how much time is left on the clock. So then, in theory, once you've capped it, the defenders aren't going to have enough time to adequately mount an attack to take the point back. It hasn't been tested very much, though.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the counter attack timer is based off the morale status of the other team. It's not based off like the time left in the event, though.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But like, so even if they're turtling, like, and it's still engaged, and there's 5 minutes left, like, you're still gonna have 12 minutes on the counter attack timer.
Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I got this information from a Ninth Corps guy. So if I am wrong,
you're wrong.
Then I know who to talk to about it. But they or not Ninth Corps, my bad. RGD, which is a Ninth Corps 20th New York, and
the Turtlers.
Yeah, the Turtlers. They're claiming that if you cap the point with like 5 minutes left in the round, then the recapture time, regardless of morale state, is less than 5 minutes.
I've never seen that ever.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but I wouldn't swear that it's not something that they add have added because they seem to change the mechanics of this game every 5 updates. So
yeah, but they would have someone would have just talked about that by now if that was the case. Like that would be something that people might use if there's 5 minutes left in an event.
You would think that, but a lot of people like it's not very common that you see early caps with 5 minutes left. It's usually the defenders either have a crazy good hold on the point to the attackers can't even touch it, or the early cap has already happened by the time you hit 5 minutes. So
yeah, typically when the whole turtling early cap thing happens, there's like 25 minutes left in the game, 25, 30 minutes left in the game. So very rarely, because this would be a case of basically waiting for 20 minutes, not basically playing the game for 20 minutes, because the defenders won't come out of their spawn, and you're waiting for the point to get down to the last 5 minutes.
That's what happened to us one time on Anderson's. Not the time when Bus started doing the whole server announcement thing, but like RGD went all the way back in the forest and Anderson's to force us to cap the point so that they could come out and then try and get an unlimited overtime to try and get us into last stand. But then one of their guys, well, they still had some guys running through point, and they ended up banning him to try and get him off the point so that they wouldn't cap, and they didn't. They did it too late, and they ended up capping anyway. So that's how we won. Or they were going to try and get us into an unlimited overtime.
Yeah, that unlimited overtime thing is especially like one could argue that like the turtling is within the mechanics of the game, but the unlimited overtime seems more like an exploit than a mechanic where you can just hover on the point. We played Corn Brigade and Ninth Corps played Schoolhouse Ridge together about 6 months ago now, where the game lasted for an hour and a half because we successfully defended the point from their, or they captured the point, and then we counterattacked it when they were at when they started going to breaking. So they ran and hid as the attackers in their spawn. So to try to wait us out basically, so that they wouldn't go to last stand. Yeah, and so we sat there trying to harass their spawn, trying to get the game over with for 30 extra minutes after the round had ended, hovering in between capping the point and letting it like decrease, but still keeping it within the range on final push overtime. And that just seems more exploitive to me than it does like meta gaming.
Yeah, like on city maps, that kind of happens all the time because the spawn is so close to both. Like we did one on High Street where it literally just became both teams like bat and going, running out of spawn and just fighting over point, and it lasted about like 5 minutes of just us repeatedly charging out of spawn at each other, and then they eventually went to last stand because they capped the point. And that was like the only time when I've seen it. Like obviously I've done strategies where like, you know, we're probably gonna lose, but if we just charge the point at this at like 30 seconds, we can easily get the game into overtime by fighting over point. But doing the thing where like you intentionally like hide to get them to cap the point so that you can plank 3 guys on it at the last second and then get it in overtime just doesn't seem fun. And like that's my thing. Obviously, yeah, we like winning, but I'd rather have a fun event that I lose, that we tried our best in, and that we didn't lose over an exploit.
I think it seems like the big argument is just that like the metas that are developing as a result of like the constructions of the game and how the game is made and how the rules are set up, make it that so that like now we're getting to the point of figuring out like what is the most optimal way of like doing the overtime or playing the whole turtling counterattack game. Like those just aren't fun ways of playing. Like the ways that work the best just aren't like the fun way of doing it.
Yeah, like NA events, that's the one thing. Like EU events are barely like that. Like I said, we did that once in Grand Campaign a few weeks ago, and it was Bus's token, and we were defending, and I pretty much I just kept like telling Bus like I was like the only regiment on the CSA that was actually like running out of like inbounds, pretty much just like still fighting in the forest. And Bus was kind of okay with it because I was like, I'm not gonna sit back and hide. Like I can't be bothered with that stuff. So we were like the only ones doing that because I just don't. It's just not fun. It's not fun just sitting doing nothing. You know, like it's just a waste of my time and my guys' time who come and play the game. You know.
Womp womp. Is a HDC like talking about banning the strategy of turtling, or like what are they talking about with it?
So we've had some discussions. Part of it has been there's a channel specifically for discussing the implementation of certain rules. or suggesting a rule change. But rule changes can't be put into effect until new campaign starts, unless it's something like serious. But with this, it's just typically been a discourse about whether or not like the end game is going to be, like Killer said, just back and forth, which is that I've argued how it's going to become.
That will
But then
become
the opposing side's like the people who use the strat often. I won't name names, but the people who use the strat often, their argument is that it would be impossible to enforce. Like it'd be impossible to enforce any sort of way to make that where like that you would restrict their freedom of movement. In the sense, like, how are you going to enforce them like being outside their spawn? Like you can look at the battle replays, but ultimately at the end of the day, there can be infinite discourse and digression about, you know, like where regiments went and if they were like hiding in their spawn or not. And so it just gets infinitely like arguable. And their argument is that that's just makes it infinitely difficult to enforce.
there is a fine line between turtling and just conserving. Like, I agree. Like, it is sometimes okay if you mess up. Like, if you mess up as defenders and you lose a bunch of tickets and you're like, fuck, we might screw ourselves over here. We need to kind of go back and conserve a bit. I don't mind like on maps like Buddy Cooks where you go back to the graveyard and you chill there for a bit. Like, in my opinion, that's semi okay. Like, to do, because as you know, as defenders, if you mess up as the attacker, you're okay because you have more tickets, blah blah blah. But as defenders, it's like you don't want to just mess up once and then that's your game done for. Like, you want to be able to like kind of fall back, reset, and then go back out. But for regiments, that is okay like to sit there for 15 minutes, where even if we run out of bounds and have the 35-second timer, we still can't reach you. There's nothing really good about that for anybody, really.
So, as time goes on, what side do you think will win? I guess there's three kind of options or paths from here. The first path is we go down the path where both sides kind of cap a point, then run back to their spawn, force the other side to cap, and then repeat. Or as we have right now, where some people use it, some people don't? Or do you think we'll get to a point where enough people will be sick of it, or nearly everyone will be sick of it, to where we just don't do it at all?
I think
Just play contention.
Yeah, it's important to stress that like that as a defender, that is not the only way to win the map. I think that's the biggest argument against this strat is that there is other ways to win the map where you don't have to exploit this. So down the line, it's going to be. I think it ultimately, if the right that it can't be enforced in any sort of meaningful way with a rule, and I don't know if it can or not, but if it can't, then it's going to have to come down to basically the honor of regiments saying, we're not going to just hide in our spawn. We're not going to hide away. We're actually going to put up a fight.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've definitely turtled, right? I have turtled, but everybody's turtled. Like I remember once in Grand Campaign, it was my token. It was Bloody Lanes, the CSA. If we lost that map, my token was gonna get wiped. Right? So we did a very defensive strategy where we would fight a bit, and then we would fall back, let them cap point, come back out, fight, take back point, and then we would fight, fall back, let them cap point, go back out, and like even in the spawn for CSA, the Union can still run to it and shoot. Like, they can still run up to the fence and shoot into the CSA spawn on Bloody Lane. Like, that can happen. Like, on some maps, you can go as far back to where the attackers can't even get within, like, shooting range of you before they die out of line with the timer. But on certain maps, you can. And my part of it is if you're doing, like, if you're gonna fall back to force the team to cap the point, so you can then get an unlimited overtime, that's the part where that's just not playing the game anymore. Like, that's the part that I get pissed off about. I don't.
I am seeing corded. If you look in press all chat, I just realized this. Holy crap! But yeah, I mean, turtling definitely a interesting conversation. As Cordes point out, has been talked about for nearly every episode.
I've
So
made like 10 memes about it already.
yeah, I guess if I don't know where to go from here. I guess
Hurling's just on
we-
everybody's minds.
that
Everybody
is
has something
true.
to say about it. It's
That-
like the topic of war of rights at the minute.
It is.
But yeah, that we can change.
We have
I'll stop. Oh,
What
I'll
about
stop voting.
the meta of suiciding when the other team's about to cap the point if they're defending?
The
That's
bayonets and
valid.
go.
That and just actually just pressing F9 and suiciding.
Oh wow, does people do that?
Oh, so
Yeah.
to go
What?
down the morale state so they don't get the tickets back?
Yeah,
I've never seen people.
I've never seen
F9.
that either.
I've never
I've seen
seen
some
that.
people. I've seen it called out in the Steam chat before, like, "Hey, everybody F9," so we go down to morale state. That way, they don't get it back.
I've
And
never
I've
heard
seen
that.
I've seen suicide charges for that purpose, but I've never seen it F9.
Yeah, we definitely suicide charge. So like, I'm just like I don't care even if you're in skirmishing or in formation. Just if you're out of line, it's probably best just charge in, just go. And people are like, but I'm out of line. So I don't. That's even better. Go.
Here's a question that pertains to meta. With contention going how it is contention like meta definable? Is it just pure chance, or can we work around the chance? I think
it's
so.
a mix. I think it's a mix.
I think there's the basic meta, which kind of works in the first 10 minutes, and then everything else is RNG.
I think
Depends on the map too, because some of the maps have like a point that's close to each spawn, only one of them, and then some of them have like multiple points close to the enemy spawn.
Yeah.
So if
Like
you get RNG both of those points close to their spawn, you're screwed. But some of them, I think
Yeah.
it's the Cox's push map is pretty equal, where there's a spawn, there's a
Yeah.
point on each side, and then
Yeah.
there's 3 in the middle.
I think something that I've seen developing in pubs over the past few months, or since it's been out, really, compared because I haven't been seeing this this mode being used in events much. But in pubs, what I've been seeing is that units will position themselves between the point that they're attacking and defending, and then the most amount of points possible, so that they're in between where they're attacking and where the next point is most likely to be.
Oh, for
So
sure.
like, yeah, if you spawn in and the point is closest to the other team's spawn, you kind of just stay back, like have a little shootout with them, so that you can get there because you're gonna go down a morale stage, so you don't want to be too aggressive to the point where you're gonna like take yourself almost at taking losses. Because if you're like nearly at engaged and then you go straight down because they capture the point, then you're nearly at taking losses, but you
But
can
yeah.
be. And then once the timer's like almost up, you got about 1 minute and 45 seconds left. Like when it's 3/4, you start dividing because if the point's close to their spawn, most of the time you have access to every other point. So you can pretty much corner them and then position yourself so that you have a flag at pretty much nearly every point, ready to just jump on it as soon as it comes up.
When I'm leading pubs on contention, once that point pops up, I just disengage and break off to the next point
Yeah.
immediately. Is that what you guys do too? Just break off immediately?
Yeah, like it's
And
all
this
about
game chat,
just
like
getting-
this last Friday we did the pubs versus regiment, and we even said that as soon as we capped that one close to our point up at the top of the hill in Cox's, we said let's not just sit here, let's get down the hill and get to those middle points and have them guarded basically before it changes.
Yeah, like we did it on farmland on it would have been Grand Campaign on Saturday. No, was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. Sorry, would have been on Friday, I believe. Yeah, Friday we did contention. I think. Oh, was it some point? I can't remember. It might have been
Friday
last
would have been the
Saturday.
Reds versus pubs, I think, if you were in with us.
No, I'm talking about EU.
Oh,
And
okay.
no, it was Saturday. It was Saturday. My bad. Yeah, it was Saturday. Because we didn't do Grand Campaign. And pretty much all we did was we spaced ourselves out, and then the other team pretty much bogged themselves down on one point. It was on farmland, so like the Dunkers Church one, Miller's Cornfield one, in Hagerstown, and Hooker's Push. And we pretty much just like surrounded them into their little point that was outside of their spawn. Like, do you know the one that's like down the road? Like, do you know the Dunkers Church road that goes towards the Union spawn?
Yeah.
There's like the flagpole that's like kind of there.
Mhm.
And we pretty much, that was where they were all surrounded, all the CSA. and we ended up having like one group by Dunker's Church, and then the rest of us were on like the CSA. Do you know the artillery that's on like the Hookers Push hill, like where point
Yeah.
is normally on Hookers? We just took that, so then we just pretty much had them cornered. So, and then when there was like 30 seconds left, we just started moving away from them and just disengaged and got ready to jump on the next point wherever it was, which worked out really well because the CSA they didn't divide themselves up. They kind of were just like, this is our point, we need to defend it, we can't let them get anywhere near it, kind of thing, and just bog down on it when they can they can still. I think as defenders, once you capture the point, you kind of forget that you can still spread out and not have to sit around that one flagpole. But yeah,
I think it's been helpful sometimes to just if like the enemy has a point, attack it only to the point that you can neutralize it. But then once you neutralize it, just neutralize it to the point that it will switch to the next point of contention. But then that's the only offensive action that should be taken if it's close. They're closer to their spawn than it is to yours.
yeah. I mean that can happen. Obviously, if the 15-minute timer runs out and you lower the flag and then just automatically switches, which I think is a good mechanic. I like contention.
Yeah.
I think contention's probably one of the. I'd say it's probably the fairest game mode in War of Rights. Like, because Conquest is biased towards one side, depending on which side's closer to the midpoint. Skirmish is biased on whoever has more tickets and positioning on the maps. But contention's just, it's not biased to any side. It's RNG. So, it doesn't have like a. It just obviously sometimes it can be, if the first flag's close to your spawn, but that's not any bias to contention. That's just the RNG of contention.
And I've had two good plans to make contention a little bit better, and that was one of them was like if the enemy team gets the point next to their spawn, then the next point can't be near their spawn again. And then the other idea was that the points should be worth different value to each team, basically based on how far they are away from your spawn. So like if you cap the point next to the enemy spawn, you would get they would lose like 1.5 morale stages, for example.
I feel that all those numbers are a little too like even currently the current contention numbers, like a whole morale state for them capping a point, it just seems a little high to me. I think that it can just be a little too brutal sometimes or too unforgiving for the losing team.
Yeah, I thought that, but then they always seem to balance each other out eventually. Like, yeah, you might go straight to engaged after the first flag, but then if you position yourself correctly and jump on the next flag and defend it properly, they normally, if they attack it, they lose half their tickets of that morale stage, and then they go straight back to pretty much level with you.
But I've seen battles. Now, granted, it is pubs, so it's a completely different story on how it plays, like with organized regiments to an extent. But I've seen it where just bad RNG leads to one side being barely engaged and another side at last stand. So
bad RNG can be.
So like the if they lessened it out, maybe like half a morale state instead of a whole morale state, it'd be a little more forgiving to the RNG issue.
One time on waterways, so do you know that one that has the river that you have to cross, and that's like the only way across the river? So we did a map on there where the point was on our side of the river, and then it went to the other side, and then pretty much all of us I was playing Union, we crossed the river onto the CSA side, fought them a bit. We knew we weren't going to take it, so then we just positioned ourselves at the river, and to defend, because the only way they can get to us is across the river. And if the CSA had been smart, they would have probably tried to push us, like pretty much like charge us off and wipe us, and then take the river themselves. So then we couldn't like take it or cross it, pretty much.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They just kind of stayed grouped up around the point, and that's how they ended up losing it, because we just stopped them getting across the river.
Yeah, with waterways, it seems like the idea there for the CSA is that you got to push across the river and then get into the woods that are next to the river that comes from a Union spawn, and try to fight them there, so that you harass them as they're coming out of their spawn.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think just defending a point on contention, defenders need to just know that they don't have to turtle around the point. They should do what the attackers do and pre-plan a lot more than what they currently do. Because I mean, I've done that before as well. We've just turtled around the point, and it's not just to other units, it's to myself as well. Of like, pre-planning a lot more, not just being like, oh my god, if they take the point, we're screwed. So let's just sit here with bayonets drawn and just get ready to flash them. But yeah.
Do we? Yeah, McPhail.
I was gonna say that kind of brings us into another meta of like defending not on the point or behind the point, but in front of the point on some maps. Because I see that a lot where people, I think like skirmish has trained us to cap and then fall back kind of thing. And so I see people, they'll cap, and then there's a perfectly defensible fence line in front of the point or something like that, and they still pull back, and then they let the enemy take that fence line, and then it's, they're just giving the enemy a defensive position.
I think it's a big game about how far your spawn is away, because I've seen battles get won because the attackers position themselves good near point, but I've also seen battles get lost where the attackers try to defend too far in front of point, and it takes them way too long to get there from their spawn.
Yeah. And then there's also the thing where people will charge, like counter charges or whatever, like it especially happens in skirmish when you're down to the wire and people's counter charge to keep the attackers off the point.
Yeah. I like
that.
doing that.
That can happen a little bit in contention too. Like if you're, want to delay them getting to it to take it down, you could counter charge them.
I just like near the end of events, like not necessarily on Conquest of Contention where they have to lure a flag, but like pushing the other team away from being in the point of contention and just like keeping them off it, like that. In my opinion, that's something that some people don't do very often, but I think it should be more of a common thing. Is like charge past point and stop them getting on point. But I feel like some people don't do it.
They just stand on the flag and get hit by RD.
Yeah.
Corded, you've been subtly speaking to Turtling for a little bit. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how you would counter such a strategy.
I think I've heard Sammy say before. He said if attackers just push past the point, so they're basically just doing that. That's pretty much it. That's all I got for it. I'm just making memes right now.
So pretty much just like hold past point and then just wait for the timer to run out, and then like there's nothing like as the attackers, there's nothing you can do but attack, capture point, because like it's just really annoying. That's why I just hate it. It's just like it's so annoying. We
tried that actually, that strat on Renos Fall a few weeks ago, where this was really prevalently used against our shall not be named opponents, and they fell back. They were hiding in that cornfield and then passed like where we could even shoot at them for most of the round. There was a couple times they popped out, but we pushed them. It was Renos Fall and Anderson's counterattack. And both maps we had pushed them basically, like we'd pushed them toward their spawn, and we were forced to cap early, and we were trying to fight it out in their spawn. But the issue was that we were so far away from our spawn that we couldn't defend adequately. But we defended against 2 or 3 charges, but after the 3rd charge, we only had 20 people on the front, and everyone else running from spawn, and they could just bayonet and go and overwhelm us.
Yeah, it's just bullshit.
Is already a meta.
I mean, how you use it.
Or is it an anti-meta?
Anti-meta?
Seffi would argue.
I've seen CSA regiments win river crossing with RD.
I haven't seen. I mean, I guess I haven't been seeing river crossing matches of late, but it doesn't surprise me, because every time I watch rivers crossing, CSA artillery is terrible.
I've came up with a new meta for reg sniping. The anti-reg sniping method is to reg snipe back.
Ah, yes, the metas of recruitment and War of Rights.
Oh god.
The best way to do it is to keep spamming voice chat crap and spawn.
Dude, I don't want to name any names, dude. I don't want to name any names.
You got to come on slow. You got to be like, "Hey, bud, I like your name," and it's like grooming almost.
Yeah. I used to put the thing in the text chat back when I was like first starting in like 2020, and I used to put like if anyone's looking for a regiment, type so and so, and then nobody would type.
I've been talking to Polymath out of all people about this recently, but because because he plays pubs a lot, he sees it. I mean, regardless of what you think about Polymath, but there's two like very distinctive types of recruitment. You have your shall not be named regiments recruiting and spawn 24/7.
I hate that.
Do you want to join my regiment? Do you want to join my regiment? And then you have cool regiments who lead take officer, lead the line, and then afterwards are like they don't even type it out in chat. They're like, if you like if you like what you see or whatever, like you can add me on Steam or something, but like not targeting any specific people in general. That seems like a lot more ethical way of doing it.
Oh, yeah, but there's also the third option of just running around actually playing the game, and then if you see somebody, like if you see a recruit, or like not a recruit, or like a new sorry, I'm not reg sniping. If you see another guy, and then he does something good, and you're like, oh nice, and then you just get talking to him, and you just have a genuine conversation.
That's a good way as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
an actual conversation that works well too.
When,
and then you just then you ask him, you know, oh, are you new? Like, are you looking to join a unit? Blah blah. And he's like, oh yeah, so, and you just add him on Steam.
I find the best thing is like if they have fun with you, like if you do something like go do hood rat shit or something like skirmishing, and they have fun with you, they'll join. Like I remember one time we were on some map and there's a stump, and we like made a name for our squad called the Stump Squad, and like we were like Stump Squad, and like we were just at the stump the whole game, just shooting at the enemy like skirmishing.
I remember when I recruited back for the IVB a couple years ago when I was mustering companies, I would try to do the officer strategy, and I remember one game, it was Eastwood Skirmish, we got the whole team together at the end, we were about to win, I said the little thing. That was the most I've been shouted down ever in War of Rights.
There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. I think.
Sure.
I think the right way is you got to like engage and like conversate with the people in the group the whole time and keep them engaged. Keep just talking to them the whole time, not even necessarily just giving orders. But like if you're just playing like the strategy play to win, and then the like battle's near ending and you tell them to join, like then pubs will typically just like shoot you.
Yeah, like I am like I don't recruit like I don't talk to people who are like in big lines. Like if someone's in a big line, I just like I find them when I catch them when they're on their own. Yeah. Sounds really weird.
Whoa.
But yeah,
the killer just say he hates big lines. He hates Europeans. We got it here. We're circling back to the beginning.
No, I've got no tea left to split.
What's hard to do is like do the leadership, lose, and still try to like keep people engaged, even though basically everyone knows that it's a foregone conclusion that you guys are losing that round.
Yeah.
I was leading around on a Cox's push the other day, and the other person, one of the other people leading the regiment, they just kept suicide charging that cornfield. We were outnumbered by 10 on a pub round. They just kept suicide charging that cornfield, getting hit by a CSA artillery when they would stop on the stone wall. I'm like, dude, we gotta cut this out. And it's already like we're already breaking, and they're engaged. And like everyone in the line saying like, oh, we lose in this round. I think like the hardest thing to do is try to keep pubs engaged when everyone knows that you're losing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can agree with that.
And then go on to say, come join my regiment if you like what you see.
I was going to say, it definitely depends on the map too. Because some maps you got enough to, like, especially if you're defending, you have enough time to kind of talk to them, like, while you're in position waiting for the attack to come or something. But if you're attacking, like, there's almost never time to talk.
I can agree with that.
So we're almost getting to our hour mark. So I guess, does anyone else have any quick things they want to talk about or say before we call it off for a night?
I'm trying to think of any metas we didn't mention.
If anyone knows, there's a regiment called the Army of Northern Virginia. Link in
Never
description.
heard
I love corn, dude.
Yeah.
If you like what you heard, join the frequency.
if you didn't like it, join
if you agree with any of my opinions in today's podcast, feel free to join my regiment.
No, if you disagreed with anyone in this podcast, feel free to join their regimental Discord to have conversations about what was good.
Oh yeah. Hey, I'm always open for open dialogue. Join and debate with. Actually, I had another like I upset somebody else last week in the podcast too. I had another angry message. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like that sometimes.
I'm making enemies.
Yeah.
make an enemy.
Yeah, we're gonna
This
make a
pod-
tier list of the comments from that video.
This
Uh,
podcast is ruining my reputation.
We're gonna have to have another podcast about like
I
I'm
wear
a
my
really
E
nice-
tier. I wear
I'm
my
a
E
really
tier
nice
with
guy.
a badge of honor.
I'm a really nice guy, please.
I'm gonna
Oh,
see
jeez.
Buzz and give him a big kiss on the cheek. Thank you, Buzz.
It's nothing personal, it's just Ohio.
Thank you, Buzz.
big kiss
That's
on the
all.
neck.
Big kiss
Yeah.
on the neck just for Buzz.
just for Bus. But yeah.
Yes. Come back, tune in next week when we talk about comments from the tier list.
I would be. I think I would enjoy that video a little too much. I don't know if people would, but
Well,
that.
as long as what you could do is you could just not expose names of the
Oh,
comments.
but people could
the
just look it
comment.
up. Obviously, no. We'll
Just
we'll
no,
put
yeah,
it.
like-
there's less than 100 comments.
We'll put
No,
it
but
in-
like even like like Discord messages that you might have received.
Ah, what we do is we encrypt the messages from the YouTube comments and have like a ciphertext on screen, and people will have to like figure out whose it is. Some stupid
What you do is you re-rank the regiments based on how well they handled the
I
how
thought
well
that
they
too.
handled the video. If they responded cringe, they get L
yeah.
tier.
We'll play a game. Guess the salty gamer, and you put the comments on stream. I would like to apologize to no one for any comments that I make in the podcast. It is strictly for content, and I hope you guys know that you made Eagle like $1.
Yeah, the big
Buck
bucks. here.
30.
$1.30. So you should all be really proud of yourselves.
You just funded my war machine. But anyways, thank you all for watching or listening. I hope you all enjoy. Tune in weekly. You can see the previous podcast in a playlist in the description. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and hope you have a
Badline
wonderful rest of your
Network,
night. See you
signing
guys in
off.
the next one. Battleline
Yeah.
Network, tuning out, or what was it? Closing out?
Closing. Not live.
Not live. We weren't even live in the first place.